Hello, welcome to CSW66 and our Pathways to Peace event, Sounds of Healing, Bringing in the New Earth, organized by my dear friend, my peace partner and colleague, Tami Briggs. I am Tezkiah Gabriel, and I am the Executive Director of Pathways to Peace. It is absolutely our honor to host this event today. But before we begin, I will say a few words about Pathways to Peace. Pathways to Peace, or PTP, is a UN-designated peace messenger organization that holds consultative status with the UN Department of Global Communications and the UN Economic and Social Council, GC, and ECOSOC. For over 40 years, Pathways to Peace has been engaged in innovation, collaboration, and movement building. Our vision is for a world at peace, and our work is about building a culture of peace. Pathways to Peace provides education, consultation, and mentorship, and we work in partnership for these past 40 years. Through those partnerships, Pathways to Peace has inaugurated several UN-recognized global peace initiatives, including the UN International Day of Peace, the UN Culture of Peace Resolution and Program of Action, and the Peace Wave. The Peace Wave is a pause at noon every day to imagine and envision peace. That's noon in all time zones. So then imagine a wave going around the world of people holding peace for just that moment. Pathways to Peace works in partnership with peace builders locally and globally on programs that build peace and eliminate barriers to peace, including nuclear disarmament, climate change, racial equity, and gender equality. We hope you'll join us in our work, and you can check us out at www.pathwaystopeace.org. Since its inception, Pathways to Peace has always honored and supported women's leadership at the UN and beyond. So we have always been present and engaged in CSW. This year, we have 11 parallel events, with Tami's event being one of those. So I just wanted also to mention that in relationship to women's leadership, on March 8th, the International Women's Day, Pathways to Peace launched its first Exceptional Women of Peace Award program. And on September 12th, we will be recognizing 2 awardees, an Exceptional Woman of Peace and an Exceptional Young Woman of Peace. For more information, please go to our website, go to programs, look at the Exceptional Women of Peace program, and fill out the short online nomination. I'm sure you know or are an exceptional woman of peace. I will put that link in the chat. And now let me tell you a little bit about Tami. Tami and I know each other quite well. She is a leader in our archives project here at Pathways to Peace. She has played numerous times for our events through the year, and she has been a presenter in addition to today on several occasions for Pathways to Peace. For the past 20 years, Tami has served as a therapeutic harpist in the hospital and hospice settings. In 1999, she founded Musical Reflections, which is located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tami is an international speaker and a dynamic facilitator, educating audiences about using music for good health and for healing. As a composer and recording artist, she has released 15 CDs for relaxation, comfort, healing, stress reduction, and sleep. She has also written 2 books. She holds a certificate from the International Harp Therapy Program. Prior to founding Musical Reflections, Tami was a co-founder of a cross-cultural training company. She helped business people on 5 continents increase their international business success by developing cross-cultural skills. Tami has lived and worked in Switzerland and Japan. She has an MBA from the University of Missouri, Columbia. And Tami is a peace leader, and she does hold that vision for peace. And so her latest endeavor is creating the Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity, which is an organization for harpists around the world who play with love for unity, peace, and worldwide healing. So at this point, please join me in welcoming Tami as she presents Sounds of Healing, bringing in the new earth. Tami, it's my honor and delight to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Tez. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be with you all today. And it's always been a dream to speak at the United Nations, especially for the Commission on Status of Women. So I'm just honored and thrilled to be here. And I'm so appreciative of Pathways to Peace for your sponsorship for this event. And I'm going to say more about PTP a little bit later, but just thank you. I'm very grateful for all of you. PTP was founded by Avon Madison, Joni Cirardelli, and David Wick. Avon obviously left us in October of 2021, but Joni and David are here today. So thank you both for being here. And Tez is the wonderful executive director now. So great organization. And like I say, I'll say a little bit more about that in a little bit. I want to begin our time together with a reading that is about music and healing. And this reading comes from the book Transitions by Julia Cameron. Some of you probably know of Julia Cameron's work. She's the woman that wrote The Artist's Way. It's a wonderful book to help us find our most creative self. And this book is not nearly as well known, but she writes a short paragraph about music, and I'd like to begin with these words. Our days flow like music. Allowing music to move through our days, we shape the symphony of our life. Music is a teacher, and we can welcome the lessons that it brings. Music teaches us about beauty, it teaches us about grace, and it teaches us about harmony. Music also teaches us the importance of tempo and the need for rest. Today, I open my heart to music. I allow music to teach and temper me, and I take time to appreciate and savor graceful notes. Isn't that a beautiful writing about music by Julia Cameron? And I want to play 2 songs to bring us in community together today. The first song is called Healers of the Heart, and the second song is Ode to Joy. And while I play these 2 songs, I would invite you to sit comfortably wherever you need to be touched with the music. And I also want to introduce a hand mudra that I actually learned yesterday in my yoga class. And this hand mudra is called the little dove. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so appropriate for our gathering today. And you can hold this mudra while I play if you'd like. So it's praying hands and then kind of making a little diamond shape and then moving your thumbs to the center of the little diamond, and you're holding a little dove. You're holding a little dove. And I am envisioning each of us holding a little dove of peace while I play Healers of the Heart and Ode to Joy. I'm Tami Briggs, and I've been playing the harp for 32 years. And I came to the harp in kind of a roundabout fashion. I grew up in a little tiny town in north central Missouri, and my parents decided they wanted to give me piano lessons. So I grew up playing piano, but as a child, my piano teacher was also a harpist. And she planted the seed many, many years ago. And when I was turning 30, I was going through a really awful time in my life. And so I ended up giving myself harp lessons and a harp for my 30th birthday. It was the first time I'd ever given myself a gift. And for that year, it was really important that I do that. And when I ran my fingers up and down the strings, which is what the harp is probably best known for, it's called the glissando, I thought that was such a cool feeling in my finger and a wonderful sound. And I literally fell in love with the instrument from the moment I touched it. And after I started taking lessons, and when I had enough music worked up, I started playing at weddings and funerals and church services, all the typical kinds of things harpists would do. And when I would be out and about playing, I would see people get really mellow and really relaxed. And I knew there was something really special about this instrument. And I happened upon a teacher who was teaching harpists how to take it into nursing homes, hospitals, and hospice. So I was drawn to her program, and I studied with her back in 1995. I was in her first program, and we were really her guinea pigs. She just wanted to see if this program had any viability. And there's now more than 1,500 of us around the globe that have been certified with her. And when I'm wrapping up today, I will say more about that. But I guess the program has indeed been successful. And also just a little bit about my personal experience. When I studied with her, I was deathly afraid of going into hospitals, to the extent that when I was a small child, I would always pass out when I would go into hospitals. So I obviously had a lot of my own healing I had to do before I would ever be able to offer this as a gift. So for the past 25 years before COVID, that's what I was doing, was playing in the hospital and hospice setting, taking not this harp, this is my pedal harp, concert harp, but I would take a folk harp to the hospital and play at the bedside. And when COVID hit 2 years ago, almost to the day, we were not allowed to go into the hospital setting any longer. So it was a very scary time, obviously, for the whole world. And personally, I just didn't know what I was going to do, because that was what I loved to do, and it was what I felt called to do, and it all went away. So I spent quite a bit of time discerning and really inner reflecting on what would be my next step. And probably a year and a half into COVID, I had a dream that I needed to start an organization called the United Nations of Harpists. And I'll say more about that group a little bit later. About 10 days after I had that dream, so I'm thinking about this dream and thinking about, okay, how am I going to put that together, and what's that going to look like, and how am I going to do this? I get a call from a really dear friend of mine, Erica, who is on the board of Pathways to Peace. And she said, oh, I just talked to our executive director, and she would like to have you play at the next United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, and we'd like for you to be on the Archives Committee, which is basically working on the history of this wonderful organization. So it just was completely synchronistic how this all worked. It was completely divinely guided. And when Erica made that call to me, what I realized was, when I lived in Switzerland in 1982, I came back and I said, I want to work for world peace. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what that means. I have no idea, how this is going to evolve, but I know I need to be about world peace. And literally almost 40 years later from being in Switzerland, I feel like that dream is coming to reality. And it's really facilitated by Pathways to Peace and getting to know Joni and David and Avon before she transitioned. And Marilyn King, I think Marilyn joined us too. Marilyn is an Olympian that has been working with Pathways to Peace for many years. And the one thing that's really wonderful about Pathways to Peace is there are people that have been working in the peace movement for more than 4 decades. So they are not newcomers to our current turbulent situation in the world. There's literally millions and millions of people that have been working on behalf of peace. And so I'm just so honored to be a small, tiny little part of Pathways to Peace. And again, thank you for sponsoring this thing today, this speech. So what I want to do with the rest of our time together is really talk about how you can use music in your personal healing journey. And these are obviously very transformational times with a whole bunch of energy swirling around all of us, right? And what we're going to do today is use the acronym HARP. I just couldn't help myself, gang, sorry. So HARP is standing for Healing, Artful, Relaxing Program. And Tez, if you want to bring up the first, actually it'll be slide number 2 in the slide deck. That'll show you kind of our roadmap for Healing, Artful, Relaxing Program, HARP. And we're going to start with healing, because I really think that a lot of what is transpiring in our world today is all about healing, and specifically finding comfort. And I'm going to share a song that you may or may not recognize. And again, I would just allow you or encourage you to let it touch you wherever you need to be touched. And then I'll share the story after I'm finished. So that song is called Suogan, and Suogan is a Welsh lullaby. And in 2003, I was involved in a research study at United Hospital here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we were looking at the benefits of live harp music on oncology patients. And half of the group got 30 minutes of music, and the other half of the group just got quiet time. And those that got the 30 minutes of music, I was supposed to play the same repertoire of music for each patient because they didn't want that to be a variable in the study. And Suogan, that song I just played, was kind of in the middle of this repertoire. And I was playing for a woman who had ovarian cancer, and she stopped me and she said, "What is the name of that song?" And I said, "Well, it's called Suogan, it's a Welsh lullaby." And she said, "Oh, you know, my grandmother immigrated here from Wales, and she used to sing that song to me when I was a little child. Could you please play it again for me?" So I played the song again, and needless to say, we tossed her out of the research study because I wasn't supposed to talk to people, much less play songs twice in the research study. And the next day, I got called back to the floor to play for a different patient. And the nurse that was taking care of Susan the day before pulled me aside and said, "What was the name of that song that you played yesterday?" And I said, "Well, it's called Suogan. It's a Welsh lullaby." And she said, "You know, after you left yesterday, Susan rang for me to come into her room, and she said, you know, when that harpist played Suogan for me, I know that was my grandmother who appeared as my angel of healing, and I know I'm going to be just fine." And I love that story because I think it demonstrates how music can give us such great comfort. And honestly, I have played that song thousands of times. It's in our very beginning harp book, and I've never had that kind of response with that song again. And that leads me to say that music is a very individual choice. And as we're also talking about bringing in the new earth and all of this new energy that we're experiencing right now, and this transformational time, it's really about you thinking about what music gives you comfort and what music helps settle you and address whatever you're feeling and however you're doing through this sometimes turbulent times. You know, there's a lot of transitions going on right now. Another song that a lot of people find very comforting is Pachelbel's. And one of the reasons that Pachelbel's is so comforting is that it's the repetition of these notes over and over. One other thing about healing, and as we're talking about bringing in the new earth, one of the things that has really struck me, especially since the Ukraine-Russian situation has happened, is that it sure feels and looks like humanity is holding both broken hearts and incredible love and resilience And so I would just invite you to think about how can music help facilitate your broken heart, and as you're holding love and peace and unity for our world, because I think music plays a really important role there, and I would just invite you to think about that. And really, a lot of my message today is really about being mindful of the music that you play. I was out to dinner last night with a couple of friends, and we got started talking about music and noise and just how sensitive we are, especially since COVID. It just feels like we're all a little bit more antsy, if you will. And so again, it's just about being really mindful about what is your environment like? What kind of sounds do you have? Are you paying attention to playing and being really specific about music that speaks to your soul, especially at this important time on our planet? So that's a little bit about healing and finding comfort. The next part of our acronym is A for artful, and obviously music is art. I think you all would probably agree with that. And when I think back to when COVID hit, I was so proud to be a part of the music community, because if you remember, musicians really stepped up. There were concerts in the driveway, there were concerts on balconies, there were concerts on Zoom. I mean, there was just all this stuff, and musicians really stepped up to say, how can I help? I want to be a part of the solution here. And all of a sudden, the arts became really, really important. Remember when Andrew Lloyd Webber released many of his plays that he had never done, and he put them out there on YouTube for free, and millions of people watched them? I mean, that's music as art. It was just really important. And when I think about a couple of music principles that I play, musical principle that I use when I play, one is called inclusive attention. And inclusive attention is basically asking the question, what is meeting me here? What is meeting me here? And through COVID, these last couple of years, we know that there's a lot of mental health issues, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression. For the last 10 days, I've sat through numerous presentations connected to the Commission on Status of Women, and almost every presentation gives statistics about how the emotions have really, we've really struggled emotionally through COVID, and it's greatly impacted humanity, and specifically women and girls. So when we talk specifically about anxiety and depression, in our cultures, a lot of times we say, well, play something happy, play something upbeat, because that'll help the person feel better. And that may be true, but I would invite you to think about it maybe a different way, which is how we were taught about it in the International Harp Therapy Program, which is, if someone is feeling melancholy, depressed, anxious, to meet them at that place, and then just ever so slightly move up. And it's an ebb and a flow. So it might be then you have to go back down, and then you bring them back up, bring them back down, bring them back up. And Tez, if you want to go to the next slide, there's a description of inclusive attention. It's basically a very intuitive process, and it's asking the question, what is meeting me here? It's being mindful and then answering that musically. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The first example, when I was playing in the hospital setting, I did a lot of work at a local hospital that did a lot of knees and hip surgeries. So I worked a lot on the orthopedic floor. And I was working with a woman who'd had a knee replacement. The knee replacement went really well. She was in very good spirits when I brought my harp in. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I kept hearing in my right ear, play Brahms Lullaby. I hear a lot of my messages in my right ear. I think it's because the harp is connected to my right shoulder. The right hand plays the melody most of the time. I'm right-handed, so it's like that's where I get my messages. And I kept hearing Brahms Lullaby, and I was like, no, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to play Brahms Lullaby. But I started in to play it. I got about 2 bars in, and I heard it being played on the overhead paging system. So I stopped, and the patient said, oh my gosh, that's a song you were just playing. And I said, yes, it's called Brahms Lullaby. And I said, the hospital plays Brahms Lullaby whenever there's a new baby born. And she said, oh, well, I'm birthing my new knee. And so I thought, that's why I'm playing Brahms Lullaby, to help her birth her new knee. So I want to share Brahms Lullaby because, first of all, it's just such a sweet lullaby. And as I play it, I would invite you to maybe reflect on, what are you birthing right now? I do feel like, as we're talking about bringing in the new earth, that it is a very rich time of birth, and that we are bringing in a lot of new things, out with corruption, out with the old. And so what are you personally birthing? Brahms Lullaby. The second story that I want to share about inclusive attention was also a knee replacement story, same hospital. And this guy had had a knee replacement, and it went really well initially, and then it got a massive infection. So he landed back in the hospital to recuperate from this massive infection. And a lot of times when I'm playing at the bedside, I'm supposed to ask two questions. How's your pain and how's your anxiety? And most people with the anxiety question, while I was in the hospital setting, would be maybe 4 or 5, pretty mid-range. And this guy was an 8. So he was really anxious in comparison to all the other people I had played for. I started playing for him and I noticed that he started crying. And so I motioned for his wife and adult daughter to encircle the bed with the 3 of us around him. And as the adult daughter was walking behind me, she said, "Can you play O Danny Boy?" And I said, "Yes, I can play O Danny Boy. That happens to be a song that I have memorized. So I'll play O Danny Boy for you, and then I'll tell you the rest of the story." So when I started playing O Danny Boy, the whole family started crying, and I said to them, "What are your tears about? What happened here?" And the daughter said, "Well, that was the song that my dad and I danced to at my wedding." And so it brought us back to that memory. And he said, "I'm crying because I can't wait to get out of this hospital bed, and that song gives me hope that I will get out of here." And then I asked him, "How is your anxiety?" And he said, "It's about a 2 now." So within that, I played for him probably a total of around 20 minutes. Within those 20 minutes, his anxiety went from an 8 to a 2. And I would just invite you to think about, if you're really anxious or if you're really sad or any other feeling, match it with the music and see how it goes. See if that helps you elevate and move up vibrationally. Tez, let's go back to the previous slide, please. So when we're talking also about artful, I want to share just a little bit about the Peace Harp. So one of the things that we may remember with COVID, remember how everybody started baking bread and everybody got reacquainted with their kitchens, and there was like all this creativity that just like poured out of us, maybe out of boredom, but certainly just like we had to have something, that gave us meaning and fulfillment. And both Udemy and Teachable are online platforms, and I think they just exploded with people taking online classes. And one of the things that people did was learn new instruments. And when I was out and about before COVID, I can't tell you how many people would come up to me and say, I've always wanted to play the harp. Can you teach me? Well, I don't teach harp lessons. I teach harp therapy students that want to learn how to do the work at the bedside. But I have happened upon this little Peace Harp. It's a little 12-string instrument. It's made by a woman in New Hampshire here in the United States. And she got interested in making these harps when I told her a little bit about the group that I was starting of harpists all over the world that were playing. And so she said, well, we will call these little harps the Peace Harp. And I don't know if you can see this, but in every one of these little harps, she carves a dove and an olive branch. I hope you can see that. And so she custom makes these for our group. And I don't have it mic'd up, so it probably, I don't know if that's a very, I don't know if it sounds very good, but they're a very sweet sounding harp. And I think Tez has put my email in the chat, so if you're interested in learning how to play the Peace Harp, we'll talk. Just kind of fun. And when we talk about music is art, one of the things that I think, as again, when we're bringing in the new earth, it's all about us tapping into our creativity and learning something different and really having fun and finding joy with what nourishes our souls and helps us stay peaceful, stay calm, so then we can radiate that out to the world. And the world certainly needs that. And I also think the more we can stay in that presence and be aware of our own peaceful spirit, that's what we're contributing to the collective. And that's also part of the bringing in of the new earth. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the R in harp, relaxing. And how many of you think the harp is probably the most relaxing instrument, or if not, it's pretty close to the top? I hear that a lot. Oh my gosh, it's so relaxing. And my work is really focused on relaxing. I don't, when people come up and say, oh, I want something jazzy or lively or entertaining, I think, nope, that's not what I do. I'm all about helping people move into relaxation and ultimately sleep, if that's the goal at the time. And obviously in the hospital setting, sleep is a really hard thing to do because it's so noisy and it's distracting and there's a lot of things going on. And so a lot of times I always kind of kiddingly said, if I put somebody to sleep, I've done my best work. So if some of you are sleeping by now behind the scene, behind your camera, well, that's just the way it is, isn't it? It's relaxing. Tez, let's go forward 2 slides because I want to talk about a musical principle called entrainment. There we go. So entrainment is where our bodies synchronize or pulse with different rhythms. It's where our bodies synchronize or pulse with different rhythms. And an example of this would be on a hot summer day, if you pull up to a stoplight and you've got your windows rolled down and some teens pull up with maybe heavy metal music and that's not exactly your favorite music, if you sit there long enough, first of all, you might get kind of tense, like, oh, I just hate this, like I don't like that music. But at a subtle level, if you sit there long enough, your heart will pulse with the beat of the music. That's entrainment. Entrainment is a very subtle but very powerful concept. And when I was mentioning, in our environments now that we're much more sensitive to noise, part of that is entrainment. And it works, so you can see there's four segments there in this overhead in the PowerPoint. And the story that I want to share, I was literally chased down the hall by a nurse. I had my harp packed up, I was ready to leave, and she chased me down the hall and she said, "We've got a guy that is so agitated and we wonder if you would come play for him and try your harp to see if it will help him settle." So he had had a brain incision. It was an ear-to-ear incision, brain surgery. And it's my understanding that when they open the skull like that, there's a lot of air that gets in and it causes a really uncomfortable, agitated recovery. And this guy was writhing all over the bed. He would have been on the floor had he not been restrained. So I set my harp up really close to him, and I used those 4 stages there in the middle of the PowerPoint. So at first the music was as agitated as I could play, using the music as a way to distract him from his pain and giving him something to focus on, giving him something hopeful, something beautiful, something to help him move into the present moment instead of being so discomfortable. And after playing in that kind of agitated place, if I can, on the harp, I slowed the pulse down just a tiny bit, moving him into the second stage, which is the ribbon of reflection. And again, after 2 or 3 minutes, just continued to slow the pulse down, especially as I'm transitioning to the third stage, which is the meditative stage, the little guy in the lotus position. And what do you think is happening to him? He's really starting to settle, not moving around, and at the end, the 4th stage of sleep, the music was just barely pulsing, barely pulsing. And he went literally from writhing all over the bed to sleep just by slowing the pulse. You can do this with your voice. Teachers do this all the time with students. If the students are riled up and they're all crazy, they just lower their voice, they soften their body language, and guess what? The students will just come right down with them, because that's entrainment. Entrainment is where our bodies synchronize or pulse with different rhythms. We entrain to our computers. We can, especially Zoom, on weeks like CSW where we're in sessions 99 hours a day. It's like, oh my gosh. Anyway, we entrain to our computers, we entrain to our furnaces, our air conditioners, our microwaves, television, HVAC systems, all of that. That's all entrainment. And it works both directions. So if you're doing an activity that you want to, maybe you want some energy and you want to move through it, maybe you're washing dishes or mowing lawn or, exercising, pick music with a big pulse, a big beat, it'll help you move through it. My bias is, as a culture, we're so revved up and we need the idle down, and that's where the harp comes in. We can really soften and move into deep relaxation and sleep. So I want to demonstrate this for you. And as I play this, I would just invite you to have open body. And what I mean by that is arms and hands open, maybe your hands in your lap, and just not crossed in front of you, okay? And I'd also invite you to uncross your legs, and you can close your eyes if you wish. It's up to you. I will bring you back whenever we're finished. And this is demonstrating entrainment. And as we come back together, I can't see any of your pictures, but I would ask you, could you feel that? It's a very gentle, non-pharmacological approach to helping us idle down. And I want to mention a CD called Calm as the Night. Calm as the Night incorporates the entrainment principle, and it's 5 10-minute songs, and each song starts slow and keeps getting slower and slower, just like what I demonstrated. And I created this CD because after I would speak about entrainment when I was out on the road doing these presentations 2 or 3 times a week before COVID, I would get bombarded. I can't sleep, my kids can't sleep, my patients can't sleep when I was working with healthcare folks. It's a huge issue in our cultures. And so this is a non-pharmacological approach to help with the sleep issue. And as I mentioned, it works both directions. So pick music with a big pulse if you want energy, pick music, harp music if you want to come down. Tez, I think we're finished with the overhead for right now, so let's come back into big screen, please. I don't know about you all, but I prefer that versus seeing just, I don't know, a PowerPoint. I'd prefer the big screen. So thank you, Tez. Tez, you've been a rock star as you've done all this. Thank you. It's a lot to manage, trying to keep this moving and try to manage PowerPoint. So it's like, I just so appreciate you doing that. So another principle that I want to mention when we're talking about relaxation is anchoring. And what we're going to do is we're going to anchor you to peace, and hopefully you're already starting to get peaceful, but if we're going to do something, this is an exercise specific to anchor you, and then we'll talk about it when we're finished. So what I would invite you to do as I play the next song is I want you to give yourself a hug. And I want you to hug yourself and hold that hug while I play this next song, and then you can release it when I'm finished, and then I'll tell you why we're doing this. now you can release your hug. And if you want to, you can write some words in the chat of how you feel right now. Just take a minute and breathe in how you feel. And if I was doing this live, I would have people from the audience give me that feedback. Tez says calm and peaceful. And that's typical of what I would get: calm, peaceful, loved, warm, touched, because you were actually, hugging yourself, touching yourself. And what we did is we anchored you. Peace in our hearts through existence. Oh, feeling grateful, peaceful, sweet. Oh, I like that word, sweetness and loving, wonderful. So what we did is we anchored you. Cozy, yeah, that's a good British word, Claire. Claire is my harp therapy student from England right now, so cozy's a very British word. So let's define anchoring. Anchoring, if you get a massage and you have a wonderful CD playing at your massage, and you leave that massage and you just feel so mellow, you just feel wonderful, peaceful, calm, all the words you just gave me. The next day, if you play that same music, if you play that same CD, you can actually bring in the same feelings that you had the day before, because you anchored the music and the bodily physicality, the physical. So what happens is, the reason I had you give yourself a hug is tonight, or whenever you're getting ready to go to bed, if you will give yourself a hug in just the same way that you just did and take a couple breaths, you'll bring back in the feelings and the emotions that you just put in the chat. Does it make sense? Yeah. So it's it's kind of subtle but very powerful. And the question is, what are we anchored to? Are we anchored to busyness and anger and frustration and too much on our dockets? Or are we anchored to peace and calm, compassion, love? And on any given day, we can be any of that, right? But for our health, it's important to hopefully focus on the latter: peace, calm, love, so forth. I want to share a story that I put in Grace Notes, which is a book that I wrote about some of my most meaningful experiences playing at the hospital and hospice bedside. And this is a story of love. And it's an example of how the music helped this patient and family anchor to love. Melissa was 28 years old. She had brain cancer and had endured a battle with the disease. The cancer had spread so much the doctors could no longer operate. She was married and had a 3-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old stepdaughter. As the hospital chaplain and I walked onto the surgical intensive care unit, we were met by Melissa's parents. I felt an immediate connection and fondness for them. You know how sometimes you just instantly connect with people? Her dad informed us that the medical staff were going to withdraw her from the ventilator later that afternoon. I was touched by his openness, candor, and sincerity. I set up my instrument and began playing softly. Melissa's parents, her mother-in-law, and aunt took turns speaking to her and gently stroking her face. Something beautiful was happening in the room. There was an incredible feeling of love. love coming from every person, spreading into every part of the room. Instinctively, those present knew how to support and care and to attend to each other to Melissa at this most painful yet beautiful time. About 15 minutes later, Melissa's husband came into the love-filled room. He was visibly touched by the beautiful feeling. He buried his face in Melissa's pillow and almost crawled into bed with her as he too said his final goodbye. Through my own tears, I continued to play. Melissa looked relaxed, calm, peaceful, and content. She was filled with love and radiated, "All is well with me." Everything, medicine, prayers, speaking, and touching that could be done had been done. Music was the final gift. Perhaps touching her where nothing else could and giving her family comfort, seeing her in such peace and love during her last minutes. The music softened the environment and helped create a sacred space where love in its most beautiful earthly form was present. Although goodbyes had been said many times before, the harp was an important part of the family's final closing ritual. A couple days later, Melissa's dad asked me to play for her funeral visitation. It was a beautiful but extremely sad occasion. In her short life, Melissa had touched many lives, including mine. I was honored to share the music at her visitation so her many loved ones present could experience the love we felt in room 419 during Melissa's last minutes. When we talk about anchoring to music, the other thing that music can do is help us create sacred space, whether that's in our homes or our offices, in our cars. And music can add a richness and a depth and a tenderness, especially at really poignant moments. And I believe humanity's in one of those poignant moments right now as we are out with the old and in with the new, really trying to bring in a different vibration, bring in a different energy for humanity as we're trying to be more in our hearts and be more of love and not so much war and violence. It's hard for me to even say the W word. I really resist saying that word. The other song that I want to play for you as we're talking about anchoring is the Beautiful Lullaby All Through the Night. And this is kind of a funny personal story. I love All Through the Night as a lullaby. And when I first started playing the harp, All Through the Night was one of those songs that I really needed to memorize. I wanted to memorize this song and play it. Well, as it would happen, I had a business that I was working in, and so when I would learn to memorize was at night. And so I was learning to memorize All Through the Night. And one day I was at a conference playing All Through the Night, and I got really sleepy. And I was like, well, what's up with that? Well, guess what? I'm anchored to All Through the Night as my sleep song. So it was just an awareness, and now I just realize, okay, you've got to keep your energy up, and you're not going to go to sleep as you play All Through the Night, but you're going to let your audience enjoy this beautiful lullaby. So we have one last letter in our acronym HARP, and that is the P, which stands for program. And I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, one of the programs that I want to share with you is, I've mentioned the organization called called United Nations of Harpists, and that's what it was called a year ago, and then we went through a name change, which we now call ourselves Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity. It's harpists all over the world who are playing for peace and calm, and it's a really, really sweet community. Oh my gosh, I just feel so blessed to get to work with these very special souls that are drawn to this work. And it's about distance healing, so we're all playing our harps 3 to 5 times a week, and specific to, we have a play for list, so if you want to be added to the play for list, you can let me know. Just send me an email, and we print those off and put them on our music stand so that we know what we're, who we're offering. And then we play for Mother Earth, we play for the trees, we play for the birds. We just, we're really all about playing for peace and calm and helping Mother Earth. So if you were drawn to the Peace Harp, and if you want to learn that, you can learn that Peace Harp and be a part of our group, absolutely. Or maybe you know other harpists around the globe that would be interested, and we'd love to have them join us. And my website is musicalreflections.com, and there's a specific link under services that gives you a lot more information, what we do, and kind of our protocol of, if you want to join us. And I thought I would share our theme song. So our theme song for this group is called Peace Blessing. And this is a really, I think it's a really beautiful song, and I hope you enjoy it too. It's really about a way to connect energetically. So that's called Peace Blessing. And the other program that I want to mention is Peace Meditations. So several of you that are on this Zoom have attended the peace meditations that I've hosted over the last, I don't know, 15, 16 months. And a couple things. I think one of the issues right now is we all are struggling. What can we do? Like, what can we contribute to the world situation? What's a way that we can help? And so these peace meditations have felt like a really rich way to come together in community, support each other, but then also send out those good vibrations out to the world. We normally meditate for an hour, and I actually have been hosting them a couple of different times during the day so that whatever time zone you're in, hopefully we can connect with you at some point. And they're very powerful. It's very powerful. We meditate in silence, and then I play intermittently throughout the hour just to help us hold our vibration up and help us stay focused. And there's something about when we're meditating in a group, connecting heart to heart, even when it's on Zoom. It's amazing to me how deep and profound these meditations have been. And they're topical. We've done some on race relations. We've done some on the sustainable earth. We've done some on women's empowerment, and we just did one last Tuesday evening on the 15th, and that one we focused on the Ukraine-Russian situation. And there's research that actually indicates that when people meditate in groups, how powerful it can actually change the trajectory of ickiness in a culture. And the gentleman that I'm familiar with that's done a lot of this research is Dr. David Ormi Johnson. O-R-M-E is his first, and then it's a hyphenated name, Johnson. He's a professor of psychology at the Maharishi International University, which is in Fairfield, Iowa. Fairfield, Iowa is, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours from Minneapolis, and it's kind of out in the middle, literally, of a cornfield. And there's this whole big group of people that are meeting there and meditating. And one of the things, I heard him speak last May at a conference on consciousness. And one of the things he said is that when a population of the square root of 1%, now this gets a little technical, but hang in there, I'll help explain this. The square root of 1% of a population that meditates together positively impacts an entire society by increasing the quality of life, decreasing murders, rapes, assaults, drug deaths, robberies, etc. So when I heard him say square root of 1%, you guys, I'm not math. I'm like, oh, I'm clueless. So what does that mean? Like, what are we talking here? Well, if my math is correct, and it may be not correct, so somebody can tell me, no, Tami, you're not right. I live in the Twin Cities. The population here is roughly 4 million. And if you take 1% of that and then do a square root, that's roughly 200 people. So isn't that interesting? If the Twin Cities had 200 people meditating, we would be increasing quality of life, decreasing murders, rapes, assaults, drug deaths, robberies, etc. Oh my gosh, this is so doable. And it just makes me so excited. Like, let's get 200 people together and add the harp vibrations and amplify that. So then I took it one step further and I said, well, what about the total world? Okay, like if we've got the total world, we've got 7 billion people on this planet. The square root of 1%, what do you think? 8,400 people. You guys, that's nothing. That's nothing. Like, oh my gosh, let's do this. So we're going to manifest this. Pathways to Peace, let's go, right? She asked whose theory it is. Yes, Dr. David Ormi Johnson, O-R-M-E. He's nicknamed Dr. OJ, like orange juice. Anyway, so it's not that many people, and I see big possibilities of us contributing to world peace in a very significant way. And some of you are on Fumi and Dot Maver's mailing lists, and through the whole Ukraine-Russian thing, they've been meditating and pulling in like 500 people from around the globe. So it's doable. Let's go. We're doing this. Anyway, one of the songs, and I don't know if Joni is still on the call or not, but one of the songs that we almost always play in the peace meditations is Dona Nobis Pacem, and I know she loves this song, and probably others of you do too. Dona Nobis Pacem means let there be peace. When I introduced myself, I mentioned the International Harp Therapy Program and how there are now 1,500 of us that have been certified in this program. And I want to share something that I think is really usable and useful to each of you about this program. So in 2008, when the economy crashed, there were a lot of harp therapists that were going through all kinds of challenges and difficulties and having lots of issues. So our harp therapy teachers said, let's play Somewhere Over the Rainbow to, and then she'd send out the list of all these different people that were having difficulties. And so we did that for probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And she said, you know, this is going so well, let's take it one step further and let's play Somewhere Over the Rainbow every Sunday at 5 o'clock in our respective time zones. So since 2008, know that this harp community has been playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow on Sunday at 5 o'clock for your healing, for anybody that you know that might need healing, you can tap into those vibrations. So the beautiful song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So every Sunday, I'm envisioning a ribbon of rainbow light encircling the planet for your own personal healing as well as the collective's healing. And know that you can tap into those vibrations if and when you need to. So the International Harp Therapy Community and the Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity, we both groups are playing that beautiful song on Sunday at 5 o'clock. How are we doing on time? Okay, I have one more thing, and then I'll take some questions. I don't know if we've had questions in the chat. I have not paid any attention to the chat except for whenever, if I've asked for you to put something in there. So the final thing that I want to share with you today is what I call the gift. My dad is the fourth oldest of 14 children. Big ranching family from the Nebraska Sandhills area. And my dad is fourth oldest. His oldest sister, number 3 in the birth order, is Margaret. And my dad and Margaret always had a really close relationship. And because my dad and Aunt Margaret were close, that meant I was also really close with them. And every year, Aunt Margaret sends me a box of Christmas goodies. And every year, I never know what I'm going to get. It's just a very odd assortment, usually. And about probably 4 or 5 years ago, the gift was estate jewelry. And at the bottom of all this jewelry was this little gray box. And on top of this gray box was a typed little note, and it says, "This is from your dad when he was in Korea. My dad served in the Korean War. I want you to have it if you want it, and if you don't want it, send it back, please. I'm just not sure you'll get it after I'm gone. And if you want it, please don't tell your dad that I gave it away. It is very precious to me, and I've kept your dad's handwriting inside all these years." So I'm getting this the night before I'm leaving for Lexington, Kentucky, which is where my parents live. And I'm thinking, what on earth could this be? I open it up, and here's my dad's handwriting, and it says Marg. That's what he called her. So as a young soldier in Korea, he is purchasing this little black beaded bag, and Aunt Margaret has kept this in its original packaging. I don't know if can you see the tissue paper? She has kept this in the original packaging for how long? 50 years? And now she's gifting this to me. So, you know, there's gifts and then there's gifts, right? Oh my gosh, I was so touched that, you know, first of all, she had this. I could just see my dad, you know, walking the Korean streets doing this and then sending it to her, and she's kept it all these years. So touching. So what I am going to finish with is the beautiful song, Simple Gifts. And as I play Simple Gifts, I would like for you to reflect on what are the gifts that you give as a peace builder, and what are the gifts that you receive as a peace builder. Because I know everybody that's on this call today is a peace builder, or you wouldn't have been attracted to this presentation. And I'm going to play the song twice. I'm going to play 2 verses. So the first verse is what gifts you give as a peace builder, and the second one is what you receive. Yeah. So the reason I had you do both give and receive is it's a circle, and we get burnt out, we feel used, we're not happy campers when we give and give and give, and we need to make sure that we have our wells filled up. And I hope, one of my sincere hopes of today is that this helped fill your wells. And as my friend Jan, who's on here, says, keep on keeping on. And I don't know if Claire's still on or not. She's obviously in a different time zone in England. But we were talking about recently in a harp therapy lesson, and I will close with this comment, and then Tez, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We were talking about finger and hand stretches that we can do to help keep our fingers limber and loose. And we were doing praying hands, and then we were talking about how you can, you know, lift your elbows, and that's a really good stretch for your wrists, which of course, you know, now we're doing all of our phones and all this kind of stuff, but this, and Claire said, oh, it's not namaste, it's harpaste. I love that. So I will leave you with namaste and harpaste and peace. Peace and blessings. Thank you very much. Tez, you're still muted. It's still muted.
Tami, I just want to thank you for an exquisite program. Oh, touched me so very deeply.
Oh, thank you, Joni. Thank you.
I want to share it with many people. I hope it's recorded.
Of course it is.
It is being recorded. Yeah.
And Tami, I think it was meant to be that I was muted for a little bit because I just don't even know what to say. It was so perfect. And as you mentioned, we're coming to the close of our 11 events for Pathways to Peace at CSW66. And a lot of those events have been very difficult because there are difficult issues that we are bringing our light, our energy, our peace to. And so this was just a perfect time for some personal healing for me, and I believe for our participants as well. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. Your work is powerful and it's inspiring. And all of you that participated, thank you for whatever you are doing to bring peace to our world. As Tami said, we know you're here because you carry that light and that vision. So at Pathways to Peace, we want you to know that wherever you are and wherever your heart leads you, whatever your background or your work in the world, you are a pathway to peace. And we know, all of us here know, that we bring peace to our world through living peace in our lives. As Tami talked about anchoring, we know that simply by anchoring peace in our hearts, that light shines out and it touches and changes everything. So we hope that Tami's presentation, and I'm going to say we trust this presentation today, has inspired you to take action on behalf of yourself and the interconnections that are essential to bringing in that new earth. We know they're there. We know we are one. We know that there is no separation. And we bring that to our work to make peace a lived reality. And I'm going to close with my favorite quote that I've used many times. It's by Lila Watson, but it speaks to our unity. And Lila says, if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you come because your liberation is bound to mine, then come and let us work together. Thank you, Tami. Thank you, all of you. And we leave you with peace. Thank you.